think we can get started, Meghna. We have
So,
got.
sure, yeah, I know people are slowly joining, but let's get started in the interest of time. And of course, yeah, we'll keep it brief because I know some of us have yet another session coming really soon. So, just a quick re-emphasis, and you will keep seeing this at the top of the screen if you're new to Menti. Just log on to menti.com and use this code or scan the QR code so that you're along with me. And we have some interactive stuff also coming up. So the first and foremost question is with respect to the theme of the book itself. So I'm sure some of us have gone through it a little bit, maybe glanced through it. Some of us have experience, not essentially reading the book, but maybe in some other shape and form related to entrepreneurship in general, entrepreneur marketing. So I would just like to, understand if you have some amount of exposure. If you are an expert, that would be nice too, because that is when all of us will get to learn from what you know about. And if you're pretty familiar, but not yet considering yourself as an expert, that would be nice to know as well. So just take a couple of seconds maybe to key in what is your familiarity with the topic, because that's what will help us interact. So yeah, some of us do have basic knowledge. Maybe anyone else that wants to key in. I know we have 16 people on the call. If I exclude myself, Vijay and Satish, that makes it 13. And the way to get into this is go to menti.com and key in this code that you see at the top of the screen, 54261490. All right, so let's make it a little bit more interactive, folks. Quickly key in your thoughts so we can get started with the live excitement around this. So today we are going to cover a few insights, and really few, because the book by itself is an encyclopedia of things. It doesn't have as many pages, but there is so much packed into it. So I see some of us are familiar to some extent. Some of us probably do not have as much clue about things, but nevertheless, we'll try and share things around and make it a little bit more appealing. So if you want to share your thoughts, if you want to share your likes and make it a lot more interactive, please go ahead and do that. All right, so first and foremost, we will, of course, we'll not look into this in complete details. I will, however, be trying to export this thing and be sharing with you later, and which is why I included this. What's in this video is what I will expand in the subsequent things going forward. So today we are trying to decipher some of the very interesting things around the book Crossing the Chasm by Geoffrey R. Moore. This book is very interesting because it was written in the year 1991, and a lot of things are still very much appealing even now when we are in the year 2023. So it's been a long time looking at so many things that happened in our world. If you were following the technology advancements and innovations from that time till today, you will see that things have changed phenomenally. But this book and what's in it, that remains, and that's really the amazing part of it, I would say. So what is this book related to? What's in a nutshell inside it? Now this book relates to something called as a technology adoption life cycle. So basically it talks about what's really the sequence in a way. And yes, to a great extent it is sequential, and we'll talk about why it is so. But what's really the sequence in which a new technology is supposed to be introduced into the market? What are the customer segments that a particular technology should address first, and what goes next, and so on? So what is that recognition? What is that space? And then between one segment to another, how easy or how difficult it is to cross that segment? Is there a gap between segments, and so on? So that's what this book really talks about, and what are those techniques, And there are ample number of case studies around it, not only bundled into the book, but when I was preparing for this session, I was also going into a lot of summarizations, case studies that have been shared in conjunction. So we'll touch upon a few of those as well today. And of course, I'll share some more for your references offline. So this book in general talks about a few main segments. So what does that really talk about? It talks about um, particularly the starting point. So start from the left, where you are looking at really handful of customers, really one segment, really the persona in this, and which is also called as innovators. These are the people who are quite excited about adopting something new or wanting to try out the cool stuff in quotes, and they are also ready in terms of, if it takes some special efforts to learn something, assemble something, or change their existing way of interacting with the system and so on. So these are the ones who have appetite to try something new, and that is what brings them to the most coolest thing. Now here, this is really the starting point of the technology adoption in one way of the life cycle. And people in this segment, customer personas in this segment, are really not worried or not interested either in a very perfect product. So they know that this is new, there are going to be hiccups, there are few things which they will have to fix by themselves as a customer, maybe without support, or rather maybe with very minimal support, they'll have to do that. So they are the ones who are really, I want to try something new. They could be your best beta customers in a big time. And then once these initial teething things are through, the next segment is right consecutive. It's not way far off. And those are the early adopters. Now, these are also people who are to a great extent tech savvy. This segment is also tech savvy. They are ready to go and bring things home for their usage, and then try and put things together and so on. So they are still there. However, they don't want to be the first ones to try it out, which people haven't tried before. They are definitely not the ones who are so very much having that large appetite. And then between these, the author talks about having a chasm. So what you see at the top is like the classic customer adoption cycle. However, we see that when it comes to technological advancements per se, technological innovations, this cycle to a great extent has a chasm or a gulf in between the early adopters and the early majority. Now, here, what is happening? Why is this? The author further articulates that this is the time when people are, starting to see something new in the market. However, there are a set of conservative customers who probably, for various reasons, they are conservative. Either cost could be a factor, being tech savvy or not being tech savvy would be a factor. Like, for generations, we all had dealt with paper currency, but then suddenly one fine day, asking people in the segments of early majority or late majority to go for something entirely digital and paytm karo or scan a qr code, that was not probably so easy for them to do, because it required a lot of mindset shift as well. So it's about the costing, it's about the tech savviness, and so many other factors that have to be taken into account. So in the subsequent slides, what we are also going to see is how the author shares a lot of interesting insight on how to cross this chasm. And so just hold your thoughts until that time. We're going to see that very soon. So just a quick recap on what I said. So the early market, from a technology introduction standpoint, talks a lot about people who are very enthusiastic. These are the ones who will help shape vision of a lot of products. However, what got companies here is not going to help them cross the chasm. Now, to get into the mainstream market, they have to do something different. because the mainstream market is largely, at least in terms of technology adoption, the mainstream market is really heavy with a lot of there's a lot of pragmatism, there's a lot of conservative behavior, and so on and so forth. While these market segments are really close to each other, but between the visionaries and the mainstream market, between the early market and the mainstream market, there is a chasm. So how do people and organizations go about it? So this is yet another view that you see in the book as well, which talks about starting small, starting focused. That's the most important aspect to consider. Uh, a new technological introduction, for that matter, or I would rather generalize this to, any product introduction. Start with a focused customer segment or a set of segments, but not too many. Start with a minimal feature set. Gone are the days when it would be more driven by organizations which make products. I think we are well past that time. So now what matters is, okay, this product is being made for such and such a customer segment, and we are focusing on providing these things to begin with. And of course, once you have those early adopters as an organization, then you start to think of what else can we offer, how can we make product easier to buy and use, for that matter. So that's what takes you to the main market. So what are some of the terminologies, and then we will get to the examples more. I don't want to make it heavy on the terminology only, but we're going to talk a lot about these 5 things, which are innovators, basically customers who are prepared to take risk. They are the ones who can do a lot of innovation if needed. They need not always have everything which is plug and play. They're ready to assemble a few things, fix a few things, because they enjoy doing it. That gives them a little bit of adrenaline rush on a very positive note, and they just thrive on that. And then once this initial stuff is passed, products get a little bit, should be getting a little bit better, because now we are looking at slight amount of ease of use, maybe a few features get added to the product, and so on and so forth, and then we are entering into a new segment. The next one is really about the early majority, which already wants to get the fruits of what others have tried out, companies trying out to innovate, the customers trying to adopt a new thing, and so on. So they want to see the benefits which have come after these categorizations have tried out something. And then of course, customers being adaptive to innovative technology, the late majority zone, that looks for more and more offerings together, and we'll look at examples of what this means. So I'm not just going to focus only on the definitions, but we'll look at more and more live examples. And last but not the least, we have really customers who want to avoid the change until they have their comfort zone, they have the traditional alternatives, until all of that is available. They want to keep doing things, but once they are told, okay, this is the only option, so that's when they would go for something really new. So we'll talk about examples in these spaces as well. Now, going ahead, the author has given us a few methods for crossing the chasm. In summary, of course, no pressure to read it all. I'm going to share it offline as well with you. But what's important is to have a good focus. What's important is to really understand the customers. And when we are talking about the innovators, the early majority, and early adopters, early majority, late majority, we are talking about different segments. Remember, the customers are different in each of those. So product development companies who are looking to introduce something, they for sure need to understand what your customer is doing right now, how the customer is interacting with an existing system or an existing product, and then now you're trying to introduce something new. So it's very important to have focus, it's very important to have the strategy, it's very important to understand that on day one you're not going to reach break even. It's not something that should be sales driven. That's another thing what we are going to look forward to as well. All right, so a few quotes in between for all of us to take away that yes, there's something fundamentally different between a sale to an early adopter and a early majority even. And of course, the organizations need to show certain improvements or be ready to rather bring in certain more adaptable things from a customer standpoint if they want people to adapt things. Now, with that, we are going to look at a few examples. Okay. Now, I will just add in a few things from my perspective, and then we will again come back to you know the slides on the positioning and things like that. So, a couple of examples that I have seen in the book, very interestingly, which caught my attention. One of them is Salesforce, SaaS company crossing the chasm, and then VMware disruptive infrastructure. So before these concepts, this thing came into being, um, it was something which was very revolutionary to think about anything like that. Customers, the potential customers, they were facing a lot of challenges when it came to having to maintain a lot of things by themselves, and the ease of enhancements, ease of use, and so many things that were part of it. And then came along a Salesforce or a VMware, which was very specific in the way they targeted things. Yet another example that I read through on one of the book reviews on Crossing the Chasm was about Honda and Harley Davidson. Now, Harley Davidson, as we know, produces bikes uh, targeting customer segments which are a lot more required to travel or are wanting to travel long distances on a bike. And then when Honda, which is a Japanese manufacturing organization, when they wanted to enter US market, what they did is initially a deep dive into Harley Davidson. And then to a great extent, they ended up doing a lot more things which were similar to what Harley Davidson would offer. So trying to create bikes with higher CC and aiming for long distance travel and so on. While the basic design of Honda bikes was not really tuned to this. Harley Davidson, on the other hand, never targeted the lower end of the market, which was with customers who use bikes for short distance, traveling around the town, and just picking few things here and there, and so on and so forth. So Harley Davidson never targeted that. Honda, on the other hand, had a very interesting experience and expertise in the other segment, which I'm talking about, people using bikes in small towns in Japan to go around the town and so on. So that was their forte. When they tried to enter into the American market, they more or less tried to do what Harley Davidson did. So initially, Honda was not able to do anything different. So they didn't have a different market segment. They didn't have a focus basically. They just tried to focus on their competitor only, not on their customers. So those are some of the three, some of the examples that caught my attention when it came to case studies. So at this juncture, I would like to open the floor to any such experiences that any of you have, or if you have studied a few things or read through something and so on. Is there anything you want to share? Anyone that has a similar experience or learning, or a different one as well?
I think even the Skoda also has the same strategy when it came up targeting the customers with making hearing more about the customers and then getting modification rather than being as a competition.
Rather
So
than pushing predefined things.
yeah. So I think like I don't remember the exact name, but one of the Scrum Day India, I guess, like it was 2019 or 20, he brought this as a topic over there with the same approach.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. And in fact, talking of which, of course, I'm not an expert in automobiles, but few things that are definitely distinct. I mean, and which are what should be used not only for the technology introduction but also for crossing the chasm in in other ways. Is so when you think of BMW, you have a certain picture in your mind about a whole lot of things, but when you look into a Volkswagen, now there are distinct things that should be coming to mind. So a product should basically be focusing on creating this kind of view. Like in the book you also find example of Xerox. Now Xerox is one company, of course they have been really leaders in what they did, but they came up with the photocopier, and for very many years, and I still hear that today as well, we associate photocopying and Xerox with each other. Okay, so if we want to take some photocopies, we might invariably in our subconscious mind might end up saying,
Xerox.
I want a
Yeah.
Xerox.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's what things should be when it comes to really technology adoption, especially. The whole idea is to have a really very, very clear focus, a vertical focus, and not trying to get into too many different things, even if they are correlated. So I think that is a very, very important thing, because it can easily be very distracting, or in a way it can easily motivate companies to fall into a trap. But it's better to stay focused. So when we uh, get to a state wherein customers equate one thing with a company, I think that is another point which I found very, very interesting.
Agreed.
Anyone else wants to share something? So I'll just take you back a little bit while you're thinking about this.
Meghana Parwate. Hello, good
Sushant, you're hard to understand, at least for me.
evening. Can you hear me now?
A little better. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. My question is related to what when I was reading the thing. Mostly when we will be seeing this kind of thing, because if you're too early in a startup where you're trying to build in your customers, or there has been few acquisitions, and somebody has acquired you, or you have a substantial market share of your product. So this chasm, uh, and the most other thing which is spoken around now is the product led growth.
Organization.
The
Correct.
product led thing. So the chasm, when I was reading, so one thought came to my mind, because this is like the book written in 1991 by Geoffrey,
Absolutely.
and it was at that point of time, maybe sales was something where product was really dependent upon. But now people will try to learn your product in itself. And me being, from the generation where I was in 1991, very smart. So I now see things where if I be coming from, if you give me an app, I'll try to like we were reading the earlier book, the lead product playbook. So there we were understanding that how usable your product is, and like how easy it is for the customer to discover your product and discover the needs, what he is wanting, and
Correct.
discover the pain points by himself. He should not be guided. And mostly the format that we see is the freemium model. Mostly the products are launching where they're asking the customers or users to have a bit of understanding of the product, and then they are selling. Unless and until I learn about the product, I won't go and uh, myself learn and see how usable it is for me. How much Meghna tells me that it is very good for your problems, I won't go and do that.
Correct.
So these theories which are there here,
Hmm.
how are they relevant here? If you are
Are
discussing,
they relevant to today's world? That's
yes.
yeah, that's a very nice question, Sushant, and I'm glad you asked it. So, a few things that I feel when I heard your question. So, one thing that stays, and at least to what I foresee, that is going to definitely be something which will stay relevant, and that is to be focused on particular set of customers. Now, when we talk about apps, we talk about a zillion apps, right? But really, who is that customer or what is that customer segment which a particular app is targeting. I think companies have to continue to be sorted on this and take things one at a time. So definitely that correlation I see irrespective of working in a startup mode or anything else. I have worked in organizations which maybe at times are part of a larger corporation. However, they are setting up something new. So essentially, in their world, it's like a startup. But when I have seen them get more focused on a set of things, initially starting small, they've made more success in the stipulated span of time. And what would that stipulated span of time would be, considering different numbers and different success stories and case studies that I have seen. I think 3 to 5 years is where you need this time when you enter into a startup and really actually start to see something after 3 to 5 years. Yeah, definitely possibility that the company might get acquired and so on. But either ways, what would still stay as relevant is to focus on things one at a time. It could also be in terms of geographies. So I have been through some of the expansion or internationalization strategies in a couple of organizations. And there also, it's very, very important to stay focused on a particular geography or a particular customer segment. So I think that focus, know thy customer, understand the segment, understand how the customer is using your product or will want to use the product. How do you make it easy? I think that is definitely a correlation which I have experienced for myself, because I've seen a few products and the way we use things in India is quite different from the way a similar offering might be used in Japan or US for that matter. So these are distinct segments. And I have seen that it works much better when companies are really zeroing down on one or two of these segments, trying to stay focused, trying to offer things, then moving on to the next one and so on. So that I definitely see, irrespective of whether you're part of a startup, irrespective of whether you are into an established organization which is looking at expanding, or you have a product that's out there, you're looking at introduction into a particular market. Okay, so like for example, we know that Uber or Lyft and a few other things were there in the US, and after that they entered the Indian market. So introduction in the Indian market definitely is a need. That puts the companies into a need to really look at what is distinct in the Indian market, and then how do they go about. Though this product is not new, the concept is probably not revolutionary, but now the customer segment changes. So very, very important is to look into these aspects. So that still remains relevant from 1991 till today. And also yet another thing, to your point on making it easy for customers to locate a particular app or a product for that matter. And yes, focus on usability. I think what are some of the things, in fact, in front of our screen on the slide are very much relevant again till today, is there are a lot of things. There are moments of frustration, there are a lot of consequences and so on. Imagine a lot of procedures we had in the banking and finance space before March 2020. And yeah, there were various reasons why a lot of things had to be done in person. People had to show up in the bank, get things out and so on. But after that, if we look at, rapidly, a lot of things came into being because the consequences were, way different of not doing it. So I think a lot of these things are definitely relevant from that time till today, at least in my experience. I hope that's some good examples, Sushant, for yourself and others.
No, I absolutely agree. I think one example which I see and I have read about is whenever WhatsApp is launching any feature, it does in Brazil and it comes to India because India is an Indian for WhatsApp. So they first do what you are showing on the screen, customer solution, and understand what is the problem. And then launch to a bigger market because they want to have the chasm between early adopters and early majority, or early majority and late majority. I'm
should-
just guessing out. I'm just guessing out this, but I mean, if you look for the strategy for WhatsApp, they will first launch few things in a smaller countries like Brazil, and then target bigger countries like India, which is the most major customers for WhatsApp.
major
So
customer and a lot of mobile phone usage, lot of penetration that we have. So if you look at it from the other direction, directly looking at a huge market like India for any of these, okay, that could easily backfire for companies. The reason being, um, if things work here, that's another thing the author of this book, Crossing the Chasm, also puts up. So Geoffrey Moore has also mentioned that sometimes, or most of the times rather, word of mouth is the most powerful, right? How many of us have gotten to know about things like WhatsApp or the ability to transfer money on WhatsApp through our own contacts instead of, so WhatsApp never made a press release, I suppose, I don't remember one, but a lot of word of mouth. People started sending each other invites and all of those things. Those are nothing but in a way the word of mouth. So word of mouth is the most powerful, and when you're choosing a segment that way, again, starting small, being focused on a set of customers, I think is very, very, very important, because you cannot afford to fail in book time, else the word of mouth actually transfers into a very different direction for you if that were to happen. So very, very important to be conscious about it. What are the factors? What are the things where we cannot afford to go wrong? And so we need to start small if we are a company introducing new technology. Right?
Thank you. So I think with the interest of time, Meghana, we can get
let's
going.
keep moving. Yeah, let's keep moving. So we saw a couple of examples and maybe three. I want you to spend really a few seconds talking about companies which have successfully crossed the chasm, in your opinion. So this is a free running text. Just try and enter things that you would or you feel. So let's give it a few seconds to talk about whom do you feel has successfully crossed the chasm. You can mention the company and the product if you are well versed with it. Any examples to key in? Okay, while people are thinking, let's look at one thing which caught my attention when I was going through the book, and that is, yes, Amazon, Zoho, Mishu, definitely. OpenAI, ChatGPT, yes. One very interesting example, which most of us are aware of, or maybe using all those devices, and that's about Apple. And there was one case study I read which is relevant, which is talking about Apple and the introduction of Mac or Macintosh. Now, in the early days of introduction, what was the customer segment that Apple targeted? So they wanted to build an entirely different experience with anything that's audiovisual, so graphics, images, videos, everything, something really, really interesting, whatever was available back then, and so on. So what they started with is looking at a market segment, a customer segment, which which mainly deals with anything around graphical representations. So they initially looked at graphical designers and people who do a lot of graphics for Fortune 500 companies. And those were the people who continuously work with graphics, who present a lot of things and so on. So how do we make it really attractive for this customer segment? So they initially targeted those ones, and then they went about expanding a whole lot of things. So in summary, that's a very interesting thing for all of us to read. So if you find some time and opportunity, go over that. It's a very interesting case study of what crossed the chasm, and now everyone is very, very proud to own an Apple device and use it maybe. Okay, so then there is a very interesting, very short video, which we will, go through for next few minutes. It's around 3 minutes or so, bringing all of this together. I found this very useful. This is an insight from a business professor from the academia, but something very, very interesting. So how do we get to play this? Okay, I'm not sure what I'll be missing here, but I'll do one thing. I will definitely.
Maybe normal share link, meaning you can open you. Is it a YouTube video?
Yeah, it is a YouTube video, but okay,
Maybe
let me do
screen.
this. You go to the edit mode and fetch the link for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good. We just have. Oh, for some reason this link is not completely pasted here. All right, what I'm going to do is I will be sharing this offline with you while we continue to move ahead with the rest of the presentation, because we have really a few minutes remaining. So the next important point that was very well articulated in the book is to use data for all kind of inferences as much as possible. So try to measure a few things, maybe KPIs, maybe promoter scores, maybe usage of your product, and so on and so forth. So try not to fly blind. That's a very important thought. So data is extremely, extremely important. Next up is another concept, and this is really the penultimate. This is really the last second concept, which I will wind down the presentation before opening the forum for a little bit of more interaction. So the first and foremost important thing is looking forward to the whole product. So initially we saw with respect to the innovators and early adopters, we saw that the product in a very basic set of features and the likes, that's coming up as an introductory thing of innovators, and then eventually early adopters are wanting to try it out, experience it, and so on. That's really a product in a very basic form. It's a plain vanilla flavor of it. Then you have a lot of other things that go on as the product enters into more segments and starts to get more and more mature. So there are 4 such things which are outlined in something called as the whole product model. So there's the generic product, there is expected, augmented, and potential. So we are going to look at really quick the definitions of each of these. So what you saw in the past slide, the center of it was a generic product. This represents really the core, the basic form of the product. Then comes the product in its expected form. So now the key offering, the core, is getting bundled into part of a slightly larger system. For example, you buy a phone. That's your, in one way that could represent a core technology. You bring it home, now you want to connect to your home Wi-Fi. And what you're expecting is your phone and the Wi-Fi together is giving you a big additional set of offerings on which you can use your WhatsApp to browse, or you could buy things online and do a whole lot of things with your phone, or join office calls, and so on and so forth. So you are now looking at things to get connected to each other and give you a larger offering as a customer. Now the third circle actually is the augmented product, where things are combined with third-party add-ons. So you have your phone, you have your home Wi-Fi. Now you need just the phone and the Wi-Fi are not enough. You need actually the physical aspect of it, the routers and modems and what have you. And you also need a very interesting plan to be able to fulfill your requirements. So now you are coming with a third-party add-on. And last but not the least, there are maximum capabilities that you would expect. So basically, as an end user, You want to see all your systems connected. You want everything to be a part of a larger system. You have a smart TV as well at home, and so on and so forth. So you are now looking at really expanding things, and you want to use your phone as maybe a remote or do something else. So you're using the TV, you're using the phone, you're using the Wi-Fi at home, you're using the router, you're using the internet service and everything. So now, you have realized the complete potential of what you really wanted. So you want to be able to move between different portions of the home and different floors maybe, and so on, and still be able to do a whole lot of things. So those are the different elements of something called as a whole product model. Now, this is not something which was proposed by Sir Geoffrey Moore. Rather, Geoffrey Moore picked up the whole product model and then actually created a simplified whole product model. What that's all about. Okay, so at the center, so this is like a donut. At the center of the donut, yeah, it's filled with something which is nothing but the generic product. So generic product is at the center, which means it's the core, it's the most important thing. As different things that go along, you have different ways of looking at things which would create compelling reasons for people to engage. Now, on one side, there would be, the setup part of it, the hardware, the integrations, how easy things are to integrate with each other. In my phone example, if I change my phone, if I change the model of my phone, if I change maybe the provider for the Wi-Fi or something else, what is really in it for the customer in terms of usability, in terms of the ability to really quickly get back on, right? Very interesting example that I experienced few days back. So I had a Fitbit device, a wearable device that was bought in December of 2020. And then a few years, 3 years later of its usage, almost 2.5 years later, I had the need to buy another device. Now, what I was worried is the day I switch over, what's going to happen to my physical activity from one device to another. And Fitbit had a beautiful integration through the app on my phone. And when I install the app, log into my Fitbit, I add that new device, and I was able to get things transferred which was logged by my old device through this app into my through my new device as well. So both those devices could actually in a way be in sync, and now I discarded my old device and I'm using the new wearable, and so on. So very, very interesting aspect of how we make it easy, how the user gets easily into the system, gets plugged in. What happens when we are changing devices? That's also very, very important for all of us to consider. So interoperability is not an exception for anything at all anymore. It is rather something that is part and parcel of the life. So when you're buying a new device, when you're adopting a new technology, you're not discarding everything else that's available at home. So if I change my printer, if I change my phone, I want to still be able to continue the rest of my system. So that's really the whole product model. And of course, again, it requires similar considerations as what are laid down by Geoffrey in Crossing the Chasm. Okay, so very important is not to look at too many things. Start small, start focused, and try to become a leader in a particular space. What Harley Davidson is doing today in US, if you see, that's nowhere comparable to there are other bikes for other purposes, other market segments, but there is no point trying to address everything. I mean, it would rather be very unusual for people to go just around a small town on a Harley Davidson usually. That's not meant, I mean, you could technically do it, but the market segment is entirely different of people who are biking for, miles and miles together and so on. So very, very important for introducing new technology, new products into the market is to take a niche market approach. Try to be very mindful of how you would kindle the fire. And that's important, because without that, it's like it's going nowhere. Right then, this is really the last concept for the day from the book. This is called as the competitive positioning canvas. Basically, you need to position yourself at the right place in the right market. Again, the considerations remain the same. Know thy customer, understand what your customer is doing right now with the system, understand how things are going to be taken to a different market segment, and so on, and understand that the needs and the reason of a visionary or an innovator or an early adopter for buying a system or indulging with a product can be significantly different from people who are in the conservative or pragmatic market segment. Very, very important to understand that. And very important is to create more and more supporters, expand on your supporter base. That is how you really get into a good position. Okay, and not only doing what your competitors are doing. Okay, so adding new things to enhance your existing portfolio while keeping the focus intact and so on. I think that's really what is very, very important. Or in layman terms, what gets us as a technology company into one segment will not essentially only take you to the next one either. So you'll have to add things. There should be some amount of addition more often, looking from a customer centric viewpoint before you further expand your horizon. So those are some of the things, interesting aspects of what I found really appealing in the book and otherwise. So how much time do we have? Let's do a quick time check.
You got 10 minutes.
All right. So anyone has any closing thoughts, anything that they want to really quickly talk about before we give people some room? I know there's another session coming right after.
So, one quick thing I will like to ask all of you. I mean, I was just understanding and I was reading it. So, basically, it's not a single day process where we are trying to understand a competitive landscape of for any product. It is, be it in a B2C or B2B or the captive thing that we are all working upon. Uh, understanding the customer is the daily thing, and how the things are changing and landscape changes and budgets and everything changes accordingly. So in that, keeping all those parameters in mind, uh, how should a product person be understanding the competitive landscape, keeping all the things that we have learned in this book. Yeah. Because see, it's like a disruption. There are two things. One is a slow change, slow innovation, or normal changes, and then there is a disruption. A disruption can be something where everyone is not wanting the change, but they have to do. Say, for example, AWS. Now, the modern ways of handling any application technically, you cannot imagine any company running without Docker or Kubernetes or cloud nowadays. But it depends how should we do that. I mean, AWS did very abruptly. It was a kind of a disruption, I will say, in terms of application deployment. And similarly, now things are happening in the field of CI/CD, where we are seeing many disruptive practices uh, of deploying any applications. So keeping all these currently going technology things and product, what is the balance? I mean, that we should have really tried to understand. That's my take from when I was reading. Going from an innovator to pragmatic, and the chasm between early adopter, both the majorities, early majority and late majority, and early adopter and a early majority. The greater thing is understanding the early majority and the late majority, because most of the products in the market might have crossed the first chasm which is being talked about in the book.
Hmm. So yeah, in the interest of time, really quick to what you brought up, what's the best? Uh, so there's something very interesting in that space which is called as a sweet spot in strategy. So it's all about not only doing what our competitors are doing, but it's also about adding a few unique things while the theme might be common, so disruption, demonetization, enhancing focus on growing digital, this has been the thing for a lot of companies, and suddenly there was a change as of March 2020. So uh, some of the things which were much more required than anything else, I would say. So what is in it for the company's bigger philosophy? That's one aspect. Where exactly is the expertise available? So the feasibility, the technical aspect of it, and of course, what customers would benefit from. I think a sweet spot of all these three should really give us the nice balance. It will not be a perfect triangle or a perfect shape in any which ways, but maybe over a period of time and over a few iterations and the likes, we could get there. But really, I think short answer to what you just brought up would really lie in a confluence of these three things: what the company is good at, what is also the USP that they can offer, what is the technological space that's available to them, and what's really the requirement of the customers or market.
Thank you. Meghna.
Sure. So I think Vijay and Satish, we'll probably have to take a pause right now. And
Yeah. So we can take one question or query, right?
did you have
Last one.
in the
Anybody
chat?
has? Yeah. Anybody has anything to ask before we wrap up? Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Meghna. It is very
Pleasure.
well. Yeah. Anybody any question?
No, I think thanks a lot for the opportunity, Satish and Vijay. It's always amazing to learn from all of you as well as share a lot of things. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Meghna. It was very good presentation and nicely explained. Thank you, guys. We'll meet next Friday with some other next topic. Till that time, have a good weekend and see you soon. Thank you, Meghna. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great
Thank
time.
you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.